Hey there. Subscribe to my channel. And also press this bell icon, so you never miss any new updates, cause whenever we upload new video you will get a notification on your phone.
Hi, today in my bench I have a special treat for you all. This is a food processing machine, one of the older unit of food processing units in the market. This is made by Girmi, Italy, and it had a multiple attachment that enable you to do multiple things in it. So it had a blender, and it is work on two speeds, slow and fast, a meat grinder, a food or a vegetable chopper, and a coffee grinder, coffee beans grinder. Now this unit, it is quite old and it has a lot of use in it, and I will tell you the honest, this is belong to me and it has been in my family for almost 40 years. So yeah. Now the last week we were using the meat grinder and we grind some meat in it and it was working fine. So we left it, plug it in into the wall socket, and we had gas. So while we were sitting in the living room, we suddenly heard a loud pop, and the circuit breaker just turned off. Now I rushed into the kitchen and I smell something weird that fell all around the kitchen, like something was burning. So I checked all of the plugs and nothing was producing any kind of that weird smell, and except this, the smell came from this. Now I'm going today in this video tear it down and try to find out what went in it and what caused this short that led to the circuit breaker to kick in. So let's get started. And this is the inside of the unit itself, and in order to open these kind of units you have to remove the rubber feet, these guys over here, and they were designed to just to be plugged in as so you have to remove them toward you, and you have to remove 4 screws, 2 on this side and 2 on this side, and voila, here is the inside of the unit itself. Now because this thing, it is a meat grinder and also a vegetable chopper, you need to have more torque that the universal motor inside of all of these he cannot provide. So you need to have a gear assembly, and this is the gear itself. So let me remove this cover over here and show you the gear assembly and show you the motor itself. So this is the cover has been removed, and the covers in this model you can slide it in or slide it out. So yeah, and this is the assembly itself. This universal motor from about 19 years, from about 19 years, if I want to be exact, around 2000. Suddenly we were using it and it just gave in, so it burned out. So I went to a shop that he is specialized in rewinding all of these kind of universal motor, and he rewinded it. So yeah, this is one mistake that I forgot to mention, but the universal motor seems okay. There is a lot of dirt, but what do you expect? This is a working machine and it has been did not been cleaned for almost 19 years, so yeah, this is typical. So let me remove this and try to see if there is a problem. Oh, you can't. I have to remove the motor in order so I can remove this side. So yeah, taking a look at the assembly itself, we can see that the gearbox assembly, it is metal and or a casting metal and a plastic. It has two enclosures. So there is a gear assembly inside of this can over here, or this package over here, that takes the speed from the motor shaft and transfer it to a series of gears. Now I'm going to pause this video again and try to remove the motor and see how, so we can take a closer look and it's inspecting it further. Yeah, nothing seems to be burned except for some blackness on the brushes over here. So yeah, let me pause this video and try to remove this motor and take a look, or a closer look, at the motor itself and to the gearbox. So I tear it down and I remove all of the plugs, and I managed to remove the control unit assembly and that hold the switches and the overload protection switch. And to my surprise, I found the culprit, that it was causing all of the weird smell and caused the short, and it turned out to be an old type of a main filter line capacitor. So this is the capacitor, and if I just zoom in a little bit, you can see where it just popped out or blew out. So yeah, you can see the head of it just burst, and this is the head of it. So yeah, I imagine this happened because of the old age. Now I will have to try to find a replacement for this, and this is not going to be easy because these type of units, they are not commonly available. So I will have try to assemble one or to make one. So let me see what will I came up with. But taking a look at the motor itself, you can see that it is working. Some dust residue, and we can see the brushes. Yeah, there is not much damage in here except for this blackness on the winding, and I believe this is from the brushes. This is the brushes dust that is all to it, but seems really good, and the field winding, it is really cool. So this is a chance to clean it and to put some grease in the gears assembly itself, and I believe, and replace this capacitor, and I believe we have a working unit. We have a great chance that we have a working unit. So let me plug it in and bring my test lead code and see and how this thing will work if we feed it with power. So I connected my test lead to the power jacks, as you can see, and I'm going to feed it with 110 volts, and let's see how this motor will work. If there is a lot of sparks that came from the brushes, I believe we have a problem in the motor itself. Wow. So the motor, it is spinning right, and I believe we have a working motor, but it needs some grease and some lubrication in order so this can work right again. So I'm going to remove the gearbox housing and disassemble all of the gears and try to remove the motor and see how we are going to dismantle it. According to what I remember, I will have to remove these screws and remove the gear motor, and then I will have to unscrew the head, this head over here, or this mounting head, or this brush head, whatever you want to call it, in order so you can remove the motor and remove the screw that hold the motor in place. So let's get started. And this is the gear assembly has been taken out, and as I said before, you have to remove the screws, 6 screws in this case, and voila, you're in. And as you can see, the gears are not entirely metal, they are almost plastic, and as you can see, they are all in good shape. And this is the gear itself. So this is the main, or the last gear, that the attachment, the meat grinder and the vegetable chopper, it is installed in this socket over here, or in this shaft over here, and this is the secondary one, and this is the last one, or the third one, and this is the motor gear itself. So I will have to remove these 3 screws and hold this with a vise and try to remove the head assembly. And this is the screws that hold the motor into the cabinet or to the plastic enclosure, and as you can see, they are rusted because of the water and the moisture over the years. So I will have to figure out a way to remove these without breaking them. Yeah, this is not going to be easy, but I will try, and let's hope for the best. And this is the motor has been disassembled and removed, and to my surprise, all of the rust are in the head of the screws, they are not in the nuts of the screws. So yeah, as you can see, the motor looks okay, but it is a little bit stiff, and from my knowledge in these kind of motors, without any effort, if I just push it with my fingers, he will have to spin. So this is a real indication that the grease in it has been dried out. And yeah, but the bearings, there isn't any wobbling in it, so the bearings are okay. So I'm going to tear this motor down and clean the brushes and the copper brushes and see how we are going to make this motor working again. So here is the complete motor has been disassembled, and you can clearly see the rust in the fan itself, and yeah, and a little bit of rust over the armature itself, but nonetheless all of it seems okay. And by taking a look at the brushes they can still work, but after uh, about 5 years from now, or maybe 3 years from now, I will have to replace them. So I will measure these brushes, and I will take the size of them and bring a new one as soon I have the chance, and store it for a later time, for later use. But now I'm going to reuse the brushes that they are installed in this motor, and clean it and put some grease to it, and it is ready to be put to service. Yeah, I believe it is in a really good nick. So I cleaned up the screws. Like you saw earlier, they were a lot rusty than I think, and yeah, they are okay now. So what I'm going to do with these, I'm going to spray paint them and put some grease in them, and they are ready to be installed. I could replace the screws, but after I clean them up, the rust in them, it is external and not internal, and that is an okay, because if the rust was internal, this means the screws cannot be used. But an external rust, it is okay, you can remove it and you can reuse the screw once again. So yeah, as for the armature of the motor itself, I clean the armature contacts, and as you can see, they are really clean. And I also clean the fan of the armature itself, and I'm going to spray paint the fan in order so prevent it of getting rusted again. So yeah, as for the controls, I remove all of the controls, the overload switch and the power switch, and I remove the cable, and also I remove the cable guard. As you can see, the cable guard has a little bit of tear in this side over here, so I'm going to address this issue, and I'm going to replace the blown capacitor, and this is, by the way, the blown capacitor. And also I'm going to clean the switches and the overload switch. As you can see, it has a lot of oil in it, and that is not okay. So yeah, so I'm going to address these issues and clean the enclosure of the unit, and then assemble the entire thing and see how it is going to work. So I cleaned up all of the parts, and I started with the armature itself, and I spray paint the fan like I said, and as you can see it turned out really well. And also I cleaned up uh, the field winding, and yeah, as you can see it is now really clean. And also I cleaned up the housing. As you can see from the previous images, it was very dirty. So now as you can see it is really clean. And this is the top part of the housing itself. You can see the difference between the before and after I cleaned it up. And this is the other parts. It is really clean. And also the fan exhaust housing, you can see that it is really clean. So I believe now it is ready to be reassembled. And let's start with the motor, and let's assemble it and test it. And this is the motor, has been completely reassembled, and I greased up the bearing, both of them, as you can see. And I already connected it to my test power cable, and now let's plug it in and see how it is going to work. Now I'm going to test it using a 120 volt AC voltage, in order so if there is something wrong we can spot it right away. So let's plug it in and see how it is going to work. As we can see, it is working really well. So the motor, it is now back into a perfectly working condition, and it is ready to be installed back into the unit once again. So let's assemble it and move on to the other stage. So here is the motor, has been completely reassembled and back into the housing, and I secure the motor to the housing using its mounting screws, as you can see. And I also reassembled the gearbox, and I greased up all of the gears, as you can see. And I had to replace these two screws because the molded screw thread, they were a little bit wobbly, so I used the method of screw and nut, and I use a split washer in order so I can hold the nut from vibration into its place. And yeah, I believe this thing, it is working. So let me show you. If I turn the shaft of the motor, you can see that it is started to spin, and it is spinning freely. Yeah, so let's move on to the capacitor side and see how we are going to replace the blown capacitor. So this is the capacitor that they use in the unit, and I cut all of the leads because they were in the way. And as they mention in here, if this camera will just focus, so this is the capacitor that they use in this unit. And as you can see, according to the writing, they are using a 3 capacitor method. So the first one is 0.025 25 microfarad, that equals to a 25 nanofarad, and there is two 2500 picofarad. So after a little bit of reverse engineering, I managed to draw a schematic for this, and there is the schematic. Now the first schematic for this arrangement, this is the 2500 picofarad, and this is the line and neutral, and this is the common. But according to the internal design of the capacitor, this is the way they install all of the component. This is the two capacitor, the 2500 picofarad. This is one and this is two, and this is the 25 nanofarad, and this is the way they assemble it. So now I'm going to design a PC board and fit these capacitor into their places and see how it will go. So this is the circuit that I designed it to replace the blown capacitor, and I use this German type capacitor, and it is a 27 nanofarad, and it is rated for 630 volt, and I use two capacitor. They are have the value of 2200 picofarad, but after I measure it with the capacitor meter, they are reading a 2500 picofarad, so they have a small drift point. So yeah, and if I just flip it to the other side, you can see how I designed it. And I made this PCB in this way so it can fit in the original position like it was the original capacitor was. So if I just push it, and if I just can do it with one hand, you can see how easy it is going to fit. And now I'm going to assemble the entire thing and power it up and see how it will work. So here is the unit, has been completely reassembled, and this is the way that I secure the capacitor into its place, and I secure it under this connector over here. And this is the way that I connected the wires like they were connected before. And now let me plug it in and turn it on for the first time and see how it is going to work. So here you go, I already plugged it in, and now let's turn on the switch for the first time after I assemble it completely. So as you can see, it is working really well, and that vibration that you are hearing because the back cover it is not installed, that rattling sound because the back cover it is not installed, but I believe we have now a working unit. So this concludes this video. I hope you like it. Please like, subscribe. Thank you for watching. See you next time.